So today we're going to talk about regenerative leadership. It's a bit different than what I've been doing, but it's just as important. So what is leadership? Oh my God. You have any idea how complicated a topic that is? Currently, we see leadership as style, as purpose, and as culture, among other things. That's just for starters. So when you think of leadership as style, what they are advising currently is that you think of what type of leader do people need you to be? Or what type of leader do you want to be? Or what type of leader does the situation call for? Now, the last one is really germane. And in the training, we'll go through that much more deeply. And then what these all have in common, though, is that you're able to do something to a bunch of people because you want to, because they need to do something, or because something needs to happen situationally, mostly in an organization of some kind. So I want you to hear that because it's very much about doing too. So when we think about leadership purpose, we have doing for, or doing with. So doing, mostly in organizations, that's what it's about. There are a bunch of tasks that people need to do. They're distributed throughout the organization in different ways. And who's ever in charge of a particular spot or has people reporting to them for a particular purpose, it's their job to make sure that everybody does that. You know, one of the wonderful things about this kind of leadership is that when you're promoted to a leader or elected as one, there's this belief that you can do something, that you have power. And what most people find to be true is that they don't. It doesn't actually work that way. But the other little creepy thing that comes along with doing leadership is that you feel, as the doer leader, you feel that you're responsible for what your people produce. And people will tell you that that's true. Now, that's a problem because you really don't have control over other people. You really never, ever really know what people are going to do or how they're going to do it. So being responsible for that creates a whole lot of anxiety because you want to make them do it the way you think it should be done. And that leads to micromanaging and all sorts of problems that we've had in organizations, and that some of you probably even have been at the effect of. So the doing leader, the one who wants to make things happen, often can devolve into micromanagement and manipulation and threats of different kinds or bribes of different kinds, just because that's the only way you really know how to get somebody to do something. And then you worry about whether it works, whether it's going to be what you want it to be. I mean, it could be all sorts of different things. And you're the one who's going to get called on the carpet for it. That's not a very comfortable position. And then there's doing for leadership. So doing for leadership means that you've got a kind of a shared purpose and you're trying to accomplish something together. So you're leading for the creation of or the accomplishment of a task that you all agree is important. And that's a little easier because there's kind of an agreement. But we still get into who's in charge. What does in charge mean? How do you control others? How do you determine what they should do, define what success looks like, all these kinds of things. And that's not a comfortable place to be in, actually. And then there's the doing with. So here we really do have a shared vision. The best example I have for this is working with volunteers, because you kind of have to be with volunteers, you know? You can't really tell them what to do, and you can't make them do anything because you're not paying them. They're there because they want to be, or they're not there. So you kind of have to engage people in a different way. And you have to really see everybody as sort of part of the team, you know, and that's helpful. And then we're going to talk about leadership as culture. This is where I've spent a lot of my working life, because I've really been fascinated by culture and how it's created by leaders often. And in fact, we talk about 4 different kinds of culture that are pretty common. The command and control culture, where you're told what to do, and how you can do it and when you can do it are pretty well defined. And there's a competitive culture, where you're told what to do and encouraged to do it as fast as you can and to compete with other people or other departments or other companies as a measure of your success. And then there's collaborative cultures, where the people get together to make things. And I'm thinking of Hewlett Packard, in the old Hewlett Packard, way old Hewlett Packard, many decades ago, when I was involved with the company more regularly. And they actually collaborated. You could walk into Hewlett Packard and ask the receptionist how she contributed to the vision of the organization. And you know what? She could tell you. I don't know. I don't think actually that that's still true. That poor company has been so beaten up. But when people collaborate, there is a shared vision, and there is a sense of learning, and there's a sense of mutual achievement. It's not somebody's achievement, it's our achievement. That's a big shift, and it takes a different kind of leader to generate that. And then there's the creative corporation. So as things started to change, and change became a mandatory part of business, not an option, you kind of got into this whole thing about being innovative, coming up with new ideas for things. That's a whole different kind of leadership, because you really have to be comfortable with mistakes. You have to allow for experimentation. You have to let people do things that you have absolutely no idea what they're going to do, but you can trust them. So it's a very different kind of leadership. So this is our past. This is where we've been for decades and decades and decades, maybe even centuries. There's been the sense in business that things need to change, but it's been really unclear how. And the creative leader, the creative culture is really quite new, just decades old. And very few companies actually have taken it on or tried to do it. I can probably name them on both of my hands. So it's a pretty new way of thinking about leadership. But then I'm thinking, we're here. We're in a different place now than we've ever been before. This is a new time. We're kind of starting over or from scratch. I use the term post-doom here as a nod to Michael Dowd. And I don't know that that's the best term, but you know, we're in a time of huge change. It's going to last probably more than our lifetimes. We're losing, or very sensitive to the losses that are sort of sitting around the corner, just waiting to happen. And that kind of gives you a sort of a doomish viewpoint, which is kind of Michael's shtick. There is a there certainly is a sense of loss. I mean, you can't be human and not have that sense of loss. So how do you lead in a time where you feel like you're losing so much, and yet there are opportunities more than there ever will be, opportunities to grab hold of those changes and sort of ride that storm. So then in this very volatile, very ambiguous time, how do you lead? What are we looking at? When I look at leadership as style, I'm thinking about personalities, because an effective leader, a regenerative leader in this time and space, needs to understand people and needs to understand other people very well, and him or herself very well as well. So understanding personalities, how people show up, how they're motivated, and then understanding, what does the situation need? Is it for a right now immediate? Is it a long-term thing? So much of what we're going to be doing having to do with nature slows us down a lot. It's not going to be the really fast, you just go in and do it and you move on, because it's really creating the conditions that support life. And so those situations are a little different. And that speaks to the timeline. How long do you have? How long before you see a result or a response? How do you manage that? These are different things to think about than we've had to think about before. The biggest shift, of course, is the purpose of leadership. It's no longer getting people to do what you think should happen, because you don't know what's going to happen. There's no way for any one person to know what to do. I mean, you can have expertise, and the people around you can have expertise, and then naturally they're going to take a lead in expressing that expertise. But there's a deeper undercurrent that really now has to be there in everything we think or do. And this is the biggest part, I think, of learning how to be a regenerative leader, is to think in terms of life, not in terms of human needs. What is true is that if life continues and becomes more vibrant and thrives, we will. If we try and become more vibrant and thrive, we won't. We will not make it through, because we absolutely have to integrate and facilitate the life around us for us to be able to live. So we can no longer really think of human needs as prime. It's not that they disappear. That's never true. Of course, we need to pay attention to what we need. And you as an individual need to pay attention to what you need too. That doesn't disappear. But underneath, the fundamental thing that we all need is the ability to live and to love life, to enjoy life. So that is the inherent fundamental rock bottom place, perspective from which to come, and to evaluate everything that we do. Does it really help life thrive? Does it make life more worth living? When you can answer yes, you go ahead. If you can't, you stop and rethink things. And so what kinds of culture should we be trying to create? I'm not sure that's a proper term, but I'm going to use it. What kind of culture do we want to see in the groups of people that we're working with? So they need to be collaborative. We have to work together. This is way bigger than any one person or one group, frankly, can ever do. So we have to learn to work together in so many different scales. You have to work with your own self to be in alignment with what your true purpose and values are. And then the people you work with have to be in that space, and what you choose to do together has to be in that space. And when you start working with other groups, that's the same criteria, the same measure. You have to be collaborative, serving the purpose of life. altogether. And that means because the situation is so different than it's ever been, that heat, that warmth that we're dealing with is gigantic in its impact. And so we're going to have to be very, very creative about how we deal with it. And there's things we can learn from history about that. And there are things that we're going to discover about that. And there has to be an openness to that. That has to be really fundamental. And we have to really be intentful on life thriving, caring and nurturing in that way. Very important. So what does leadership for humans, what do those styles look like? We've got a list of 10 here, and we'll go much deeper into all of this, but this is old stuff. So it's not, some of it is carried forward, but it's more like pieces and parts. So there's the autocratic, which is very top down and very, you do it my way or the highway kind of thing. And we see a lot of that now. And I'm going to mention this because it just came through my mind. When we think of autocratic leaders, people who want you to do what they tell you to do, the way they tell you to, the narcissism in that is a driver, I believe, for many people, not everyone, but for many people, and a huge challenge is a nice word, because part of that need to have other people do what you tell them to, if you can't accept being wrong or mistaken or needing to change, that is a huge problem. And that's something that I think we're facing here in the United States in huge, huge proportions. And I think it's kind of addictive because there's a fear that comes. And the story of, oh, if I'm wrong now, I could be wrong again, or maybe I was wrong before, and oh, woe is me. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I could have been. How about let's not do it anymore and let's see if we can be different. But you have to really be clear about who you are as a person. If you're not defining yourself by the results of your actions, but defining yourself by who you are and acting from that place, then there's not so much fear about being wrong or having to change. But if you define yourself by your actions, and autocratic leaders often do, it's their way of knowing how powerful they are, how strong they are, whatever, how great they are, then it's a problem. And there are democratic leaders, people who really want to take input and who really will ask questions and who will share the power with others. And there's laissez-faire leaders. Now, I actually think that this is a mistake, because if you're laissez-faire, you're not really a leader. You're giving up on the leadership capacity, or on your part of the leadership capacity, and you're just hoping and praying everybody else can do it for you. And there's the coaching style. And we're going to talk a lot about coaching, because I think coaching in this time, in this situation that we're in, needs to change. And that goes back to the purpose. You can coach by asking questions. You can coach by trying to evoke from the other their highest good and that kind of stuff. And you can coach by sharing your knowledge. Those are all relevant things. But you have to, I believe, now in this time, coach for life. You're not coaching for career. You're not coaching for personal success. You're not coaching for task success. You're coaching for all of those things in the framework that allows for joyous life. Very different. Transformational coaching. This is transformational coaching came about when we discovered that leaders should have vision. And they've bumped it out here and made it a visionary leader is a different thing. But transformational coaching or leadership has in mind helping people grow in their job, helping people and encouraging people to gain new skills and to gain new knowledge and support in. So we'll just leave it at that for now. And that's good. You really want to grow your team, to grow the people you're with. And that, I think, does carry forward. A charismatic leader, these are anomalies. And it's kind of, when you put that in there, you go, oh, well, it's not me. For most of us, people aren't just attracted to us. They just don't think we're really great. And so they'll do whatever we say or follow us wherever we go. That's not me. And that's probably true. But there are people that kind of do that. They have enough confidence, whatever that magic is, that people will go along with what they say, whether they're really capable or not. The capability seems to come a distant second from the, gee, I believe you're great. And there certainly are charismatic leaders, and there will certainly be people who have charisma for as long as there are people. As a leadership style, it comes short in a lot of ways. Visionary leader, okay, having a vision, really a good thing. However, in this time, what can you, how can we hold a picture? You can. I mean, certainly peace on earth by 2030 is a vision. You can hang on to that. You can work for that. That really can keep you going till 2030. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of vision. But the new life we're going to have to live is not something that is clearly seen. It is really hard to envision that. You can envision people collaborating and cooperating. You can envision peace on earth. Those kinds of things you can envision, but it's really hard in your immediate place where you are right now, trying to live for tomorrow, to have a vision of that, except that piece of thriving, that partnership with nature to keep life going. That is a vision that everybody can hold. And that is the vision that will take us forward forever, way past 2030. And it's a vision that will allow us to see new things with new eyes. So visionary leadership has a place. The pace setter leader is actually competitive. This is a person who wants things fast, 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 fast. So when you're more concerned with speed and you're more concerned with winning than you are with life or joy, that's a problem. And it is a problem that we certainly have. I think that's one of the main problems with AI, frankly. That whole technology framework is all about fast, fast, fast. And life isn't. Life has its own time frame, its own time scale. You can't hurry it. You can water a seed every day, all day, and it won't grow any faster. And in fact, you may actually kill it. So pace is shifting now. We are changing how we think of what we do, and speed may not be our friend. Servant leadership. Servant leadership is really more about being engaged with the people you're working with and understanding what serves them, hence the name, how they can get their own personal growth, their own personal sense of achievement and fulfillment out of what they're doing with you. And that's a concept, I think, that is going to change, but I've reframed it a little differently. So you'll see what I mean in a minute. Because the biggest change, the very biggest change, is going from human-centric to life-centric. And think about it. Think about not thinking about humans. It might make you just a little bit queasy, a little bit anxious. It may feel like you're not being taken care of a little bit. That's the hurdle we have to overcome. If life thrives, we will. If life does not thrive, we will not. So our first order of business is truly the other. And in doing that, we will find a place for ourselves. We cannot hang on to ourselves as the most important thing. We just aren't. We just aren't. And it's not served us well, actually. So what are the styles for life? Really different. Very much about caring about the quality, caring about the result, caring about the process, and caring about the people. Very inclusive. Everyone who's involved is involved, whether they're human or non-human. And all of those considerations have to be taken into account. So you have to be curious about those because we don't know what they are at this point. There is not a lot of stories we can tell or a lot of research we can do to really let us know what the plants around us need. Now you can do some, and that may get harder as time goes on. But if you're curious and patient, then those answers will come. So patience is part of being open. Being willing to be slower, to be in sync with life, instead of trying to make it do stuff. And experimental. No idea what's actually going to work. As things get hotter, none of us, not you, not I, not the people around us, not the plants or animals around us, have ever been in this situation before. So we're all going to learn together and from each other about how to do that. That means we experiment, but we're flexible and we learn from everything. We're empathetic, understanding the needs of everything, and compassionate when those needs really are severe. And maybe compassionate enough to allow the other to thrive first before we're able to. Being authentic, real with ourselves and with everybody else. You can't make it up. You don't want to make it up. You really want to have things connected to reality. The game that everybody's playing now of I can think it, I can make it true, does not really work. That doesn't mean that you can't be optimistic, and that doesn't mean that your thoughts don't have impacts, because they certainly do. But we don't control things in that kind of way. We have influence, absolutely, but not control. And expertise. Learning about things, really understanding something becomes the gift you give to everybody else. No one can know it all. And so you have to surround yourselves with people with a variety of expertise so that each expertise area can come forward as it's needed. Not everything all the time, but when it's needed, then that's where the leadership rests. Trust. I really love the book, The Speed of Trust, because that's exactly right. You can only go as fast as you can trust. And trust, while we give it initially, is really developed over time. And it's developed by going through periods where you don't trust, or you doubt for different reasons, and being able to get that doubt assuaged. Being able to ask the questions you need, to get the answers you need, to get the response you need, for it to be timely. All those things generate trust. Not having surprises. That's for me been a really, really nice catch-all. I don't want to be surprised. I don't want you to be surprised. So for that to happen, that means that I have to tell you what I'm doing, tell you when I've done it, and tell you what I did. When I do that, you can begin to trust me because you can see what I've done. I'm not assuming that you know or understand. I keep my word. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I do it, or I tell you that I can't. Either one is fine. And in fact, it's great when you say, gee, I can't do it for the following reasons. That's a wonderful learning opportunity. But you have to keep your word. And that's part of keeping your word. And then developing others, really looking at other people and recognizing the gifts that they have that maybe they don't even know they have. Helping people feel comfortable, responsible, valued. Helping people feel they are trusted. These are things you can do to develop trust. And trust is a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going through difficulties that make trust really there. So hiding from difficulties or pretending they're not there really undermines your ability to be trusted. It's way more trusting to know that when something goes wrong, you're going to own it, bring other people in and help resolve that as opposed to ignore it. Who would you trust? Got to share what's real. So why now? Why are we in this kind of situation at this point in time? Why do we have to pay attention to this? I mean, maybe you could do it next year, 2 years from now. Well, the first thing is that the UN gives us 6 years before it's going to be just a catastrophe. And if you look around, we've already seen things fraying at the edges. So it is definitely going to be more difficult in 6 years. The UN gave us 10 years, 4 years to go. We're not doing much. So we really do need to act now. We need to mitigate as much as we can. But more importantly, it's really, I don't really believe it's about mitigation. I don't know. I think that's a very long-term game. But it really is about learning everything you need to know in this next 6 years so that when you get there, you have the skills and the capacity to do what needs to be done. That's really what the push is, in my view. So learning people skills, this takes time. This takes engaging with folks. It takes practice, all of that. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's not a book learning thing. Understanding strategy, really thinking about what you're trying to achieve. We're so used to linear thinking that when you get into nonlinear thinking, it's very different. And strategy becomes very different. So this is part of the leadership training that I'm going to talk about later, but this is really a big thing. And it's something that is very, very useful. And the sooner you learn it, the better off you are. Nature. We aren't working with each other. We're working with the planet. And if you're like me, most of us have no clue what that means. We don't understand biology. Yeah, we know there's summer, fall, winter, and spring. Seeds need to be watered. We can go that far. But the different plants, different needs. Ecologies, putting plants together, putting plants and animals together, understanding how they support each other, understanding the patterns and codes that nature actually uses. These are big things. And these are things that you need to be able to see and almost intuit. That takes time, that takes effort. So 6 years is just like scratching the surface, but starting now is a really good thing. In your own self-development and growth. Yeah, we're all going to need to change. We're all going to be different. So starting now is really useful. Get the really big, painful things out of the way and get the habit of learning, the habit of changing, the habit of being flexible, the habit of seeing those patterns. And that's something that you can develop in the next 6 years. So now is the time. It is not time to wait. So who should think about regenerative leadership? Executive of corporations? Absolutely. If you're the head of a company and you've really got a burning desire to do this, join us. But this is, I think, the hardest and probably the least satisfying arena in which to apply this. Corporations are inordinately hard to shift, and you can't do it by yourself. So if this is your goal, let me know, and I'll connect you with other people that can help you, because you really need a lot of help to make this happen. It can be done. My poster child for this is interface carpets. So if you don't know them, look them up on the internet. They've had a huge success in becoming carbon neutral and really shifting how they make carpets to be regenerative. But that's the only company I know. I know several who are close or are working in that direction, but they're the only one I know who really seems to have taken that journey on and can say they've done it, and are in the process of making it better. Department heads, sure. If you want to work with your people in a different way, if you want to take that risk, because a risk it will be, if you want to experiment and try that, absolutely go right ahead. Again, this is not a real fertile place for this. You can do it. And if you're working, it might be nice to be able to put those two together. But don't have huge expectations, because departments are really at the effect of the rest of the organization. So it's a really hard upstream swim. Coaches, absolutely, because coaching is going to turn itself on the head. Normally, coaches ask questions, try to evoke out of their clients, their client's best person, to help them achieve their dreams and ideals. And that's all fabulous. But now the coach has to have an agenda, and that agenda has to be life. So the coach has to be able to discern and then help their client discern how the decisions that they're engaged in support their life or don't. Teachers, absolutely. Teachers are more than welcome. Whatever age student you're engaged with, you have a really good leverage place to begin to share some of this and to experiment with it and to develop ways of working with people of all age levels to make these kinds of shifts for themselves. So teachers, absolutely. Entrepreneurs, also, this is a good place to play. It's a hard place to play. You have to be, again, more interested in life than profit, and that can be dicey. Activists of all kinds and stripes, because you're starting to see that the normal activism we're used to, the marching, the going to court, all those kinds of activist things aren't making real change. And so now's time to put that energy into something that will be real, that will actually make a difference for you. And farmers, oh my God, we welcome farmers with open arms, because farmers have the chance to make the biggest improvement of anybody on this list. But all of these people, all of you people, need to have these emotional contexts. You need to be really concerned about the planet, not your survival, concerned about the planet. You have to be anxious about what's happening and what's not happening, and really want to make a difference for that. You have to be curious to see what works and to learn from others and to try things and figure out what works and what doesn't. You have to be a bit impatient, because you have to start now. If you're feeling helpless, discouraged, or angry, this is also a very good place because this gives you a path forward. This regenerative leadership, as we're framing it for you, is truly going to show you things that you can absolutely do. So you don't need to feel helpless and you don't need to be discouraged. Anger is another thing because not everybody is going to see or understand this or even care. Okay? So that anger may be around for a while. But if you know that you're really doing things to bring life forward, it makes it much easier to bear that anger. So I am encouraging you to explore by looking at the webinars that I'm offering for free in September. And you can find out more about them by going to bridge2partnership.com, listening to the Earth sign up, or just looking at the classes. I'd like you to consider, because this is a path, and if you would consider being interested in the course in October, it's a month-long course. It's just the framework for regenerative leadership. It's the first step. It's the second step on the path because I'm making the webinar a prerequisite. So if this is something you'd consider, then do sign up for the webinar. It's free. You know, it's going to take an hour of your time and it starts you thinking in the right direction. And if this is really a big thing for you, then I would suggest that maybe you want to think about the regenerative leadership training. It doesn't start till next year. It'll be the fall of next year. But if you're in any of these categories, if you want to explore, if you're considering something, or if you want to think about a deeper dive, please direct message me. Send me an email at bridge2partnership@gmail.com or call me at 509-934-5930. And let's talk about it. Okay. Just explore what it means for you. It's going to, if these courses are successful, it's going to make a difference in your life. It's going to make you change things. So I don't know if you're ready for that. I don't know if you can do that. These are the kinds of things that we will talk about. What's it going to take to shift your life? And how do you do that while living your life? You know, it's a bit like building an airplane in the air. But that's what we're being called to do. That's the way it is. And you can check out the website, bridge2partnership.com, bridge2partnership.com, and explore the courses and other things that I offer. I've got assessments, all sorts of stuff there. We have to get off our duff. Now is the time. Regenerative leadership is leadership for life, in every meaning of all of those words. We can thrive on this planet, but we can't do it the way we've always done it. That is the definition for insanity. So we have to do something different. So that's why I'm here. That's why I want to engage with you. It's really exciting. It's going to be incredibly interesting and a little bit rough. But join me. Would love to hear from you. So give me a ring, send me an email, and let's talk. Thanks for spending the time.